As long as the ceasefire holds, it should mean an end to the killing in Gaza. But this phase of the peace is bringing fresh pain. In the terms of this deal, Israel must return more than 1,900 living Palestinians, as well as around 360 bodies. This means mass burials in a long line of graves. But many remains still have to be identified. In groups, people come here to look for any sign of their missing loved ones. But some carry signs no family should witness. I lost my son on October 7th, this man says, but I couldn't recognise his face because he was tortured. The testimony from the dead here is told by their wounds. Examined by pathologists, they are alleging to have found injuries linked to torture, hands bound, and death by execution.
There were a rope around their neck. There are much bruises all over their bodies. There are some of gunshot in the head and in the chest.
Israel's military told us all the bodies returned so far are of combatants within Gaza, and the IDF specifically denies tying any bodies prior to their release. Foreign media is not allowed into Gaza to verify these accusations from the Hamas-run health authority. But there are also survivors here. Those like Mahmoud, just released from detention in Israel. The living can, of course, give voice to the scars they've brought back with them. Mahmoud has lost his eyesight, he says, after being beaten in custody. I lost my sight 8 months ago, he says. I can't see a thing and it's because of torture. It was very difficult in the prisons. We didn't get any kind of care. Israel has faced a litany of accusations of mistreatment. Last year, this CCTV footage leaked from the Sede Taiman detention facility appears to show IDF soldiers sexually assaulting a Palestinian man. He was later treated for injuries to his lower body. 5 reservists have now been charged with abusing a detainee.
The first question, Peter Smith, ITV News.
We put the new allegations about mutilated bodies to a spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Israel, of course, adheres to all international law when it comes to any actions inside of the Gaza Strip. These types of reports that come out, Peter, is just more evidence and more efforts to demonize Israel, as so many media outlets continue to do on a daily basis. If you're going to report on something like this, you should certainly also report on the torture, the abuse, the starvation our hostages had to endure.
Keith Siegel was one of the Israeli hostages captured on October 7th. He was released in February this year after 484 days being held by Hamas.
One of them came up to me and he stood above me and he started to scream at me out of the blue. And he cursed me and he spat on me and he kicked me. And this happened day after day. Kicked me in my legs and kicked me in my ribs.
Did you witness other hostages also being beaten?
I witnessed a woman being beaten, and her hands were tied together and her feet were tied together, and they had covered her mouth with tape. The terrorist came around and stood behind this woman's head, and he was holding a metal rod with a sharp point at the end that he had put on this woman's forehead, and he was like applying pressure.
The survivors on both sides speak of a multitude of horrors in this war. But it is the stories of the dead that are today being heard. With calls now for an independent international investigation into what their injuries say and who they accuse.
And Peter's in Tel Aviv tonight. Peter, horrific allegations of mistreatment in your report there, and pretty challenging ones for the authorities to investigate.
That's right, Tom. The Israeli military is adamant that the only bodies they have handed over are those of enemy combatants in Gaza. And you might remember seeing one Palestinian man in our report saying that he was trying to identify the body of his son who he had lost on October 7th. It is entirely possible that some of these bodies may have been participants in the terror attack on Israel of that day. But Israel is still bound by the Geneva Convention, of course. There are rules against torture and execution of prisoners of war. And that is why there are increasing calls for international observers, international media to be allowed back into Gaza with unrestricted access to verify these serious allegations. Now, there will be a court ruling here in Israel tomorrow. We'll find out if journalists will be allowed back in. And there was another decision from the International Court of Justice today. And they said that Israel must allow and facilitate relief efforts by impartial human rights groups under Article 59. They also said that Gaza's population has been inadequately supplied and Israel must now agree to facilitate relief efforts for civilians. But for 2 years now, Israel has withstood this external criticism. The only voice that Israel is really concerned with is that of the Americans, and tonight the Trump administration has dismissed this ICJ ruling as naked politicisation. I think from that, Tom, we can infer it's unlikely to influence Israeli policy.
OK, Peter, thank you very much indeed.